Hello everyone, this is our further food for thought following the talk that I did on Sunday in our series Living in Strange Times, and I talked about a time to take new ground, and we looked a little bit at the story of Joshua, and there were three challenges that came out of that I'd just like to remind you about, because you may want to talk about those in your life groups. The first one was, have you disqualified yourself from stepping into what God has for you because of your past? Just have a think about that, and just ask God to reveal anything that may be stopping you moving forward. Secondly, are you settling for less than God's promises? Have you become comfortable with where you are? That might be true for us individuals or for us together as a church. What new ground is there for God to take you into, for you to step into as you follow him? And thirdly, do you know what God has for you, but you're fearful? And I encourage you to just be reminded of the words that God spoke to Joshua. The Lord your God will be with you. I've just got a couple of new things for you to think about as well tonight. I talked on Sunday a little bit about the Joshua and Caleb story from 40 years earlier from when they were entering the promised land, when they'd just come out of Egypt and were wandering in the desert. And they were some of the 12 spies who were sent to look at this land of Canaan. They were the only two that said, yes, God would lead them into this land. The other 10 spies were discouraged by the ferocity and size of the people that were inhabiting the land. And you remember that led to the people wandering for 40 years. But I particularly just want to pick up on this Joshua and Caleb thing. And I was reminded of something that Andy said to us at the beginning of the year about having people in our lives who can encourage us. And it just made me wonder, this is pure speculation, but I wonder whether Joshua and Caleb would have spoken up as strongly as they did if they didn't have each other. If they'd have just been on their own and there'd been 11 spies, I wonder if they'd have had that same boldness. It just reminded me of Andy's encouragement that we need people in our lives that we are vulnerable with, that we share with, that we talk to about the things that are going on in our lives. And sometimes that can feel like it's just about, well, what have we done wrong? What are we being tripped up on? But actually, that's a small part of it. The more significant part of it is encouraging one another to step into those things of God, to step into the things that God is talking to us about, to encourage us to make the most of the gifts and abilities that God has given us, to encourage us to be the full people that God wants us to be. And Andy encouraged us when he spoke in the first Sunday in January to be thinking about, have we got that in our lives? And if not, what are we going to do about it? And I just felt it was good to remind us of that, and just perhaps to have that discussion again in life group if you didn't have it before. What our life groups decided to do this year is once a month, one Wednesday night a month, just to split into 4 smaller groups which have 2 or 3 people in, and just to start to develop that place of accountability, that place of encouragement for one another. So to do that once a month on a life group night, but then also to try and meet another time in the course of the month, just so there's some momentum building. So you might want to think about that, or about how else are you going to get into that relationship with someone who is going to encourage you and push you into all the things of God. Second thing I want to think about is a bit later than the time that I talked about on Sunday. So you remember they were on the edge of the promised land. They crossed the Jordan, and then their first battle was to take the city of Jericho, and that went really well. They listened to God, they were obedient to God, and the city fell, the walls fell down dramatically. You may remember the story. And all was well. But the next city that they went to attack, a city called Ai, things went badly and they were defeated. Joshua didn't actually go. But when he heard the report that came back to this defeat, this is what happened. We read this in Joshua chapter 7. This is just after he's had a report of the defeat. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord, remaining there till evening. The elders of Israel did the same and sprinkled dust on their heads. And then it said Joshua goes on to pray. And I just felt really challenged by that. When things go wrong, what do you do? What do I do? They could easily have had a discussion about whether their tactics had been right or wrong. Or they could have started, blaming each other and saying, well, you should have done that, or you should have done that. But actually, the first thing Joshua did was he went to God. And that set an example for the elders, and they tore their clothes and they prayed. And I was really challenged by that. What goes wrong? When something goes wrong in my life, is my first reaction to go to God? Or is it to go to other people? Or is it to look for someone to blame? Just have a talk about that in your life groups and think about what's your response. How could that response be different? And just encourage one another and talk through how you can encourage one another to respond better when things in your life aren't going well. The story of Joshua is fantastic. There's so many great things that we can learn from it about